know most of you, but my name's Ben. I'm Julie's oldest son. I want to thank everyone for coming. We appreciate the support of the entire community, all our family and friends over the last few days. Thank you to everybody who sent flowers, and thank you to Shayla for arranging them, and thanks to Don Fellers for helping us again. I might be his most challenging customer, but I appreciate his service nonetheless. He's done a great job putting this all together. My earliest memories are of my mom taking care of me. I remember this. I think the first memory I have of her, of everything, was when we lived in the house up north. For some reason, they had this exercise bike. Maybe Mom probably used it every now and then, but Dad didn't. It was 2 tires and sharp edges. And my earliest memory is not using it correctly, and somehow I slipped and just put a huge gash up my side, and I screamed out, and I was bleeding. And Mom was pregnant with John at the time, and she came running down, thinking I was on death's door. But I remember she saw that I was pretty much okay, just a little blood. I didn't even need any stitches or anything. But I remember just seeing her face and seeing her crying, and she thought she may have pulled a muscle, like running back to get me. And that attitude and how she took care of us boys continued throughout the rest of her life. I remember her pretending to be my partner during FBI raids on our shop out at the farm when I was probably 5 or 6. I remember her promising to buy me every book I wanted if I would promise to finish reading it. I remember the fearful sound in her voice when I called her when I first arrived at Marine Boot Camp. I remember the joyful sound of her voice when I called her to tell her that Holly and I had found a place to move in together in sin. And later when we had set a date to get married on a Wednesday at the courthouse, I remember waking her up the day after Dad's funeral and hugging her goodbye. I saw her many times after that, but I think saying goodbye to her on that morning was probably more meaningful than I knew at the time. So we find ourselves saying goodbye to our mom too soon after saying goodbye to our dad. It's difficult to talk about Mom without talking about Dad. Where Dad gave us enthusiasm and drive, Mom added patience, curiosity, and thoughtfulness. As you all know, Dad was rooted in the Kansas plains, and he was content to rarely venture too far from his land. But Mom wondered what else could be found. She thought about places she might visit and things she might experience. She sacrificed her own desires to support Dad and raise her sons. After us boys left and then Dad died, Mom seemed to be lost. I want to talk openly about the struggles Mom faced and ultimately succumbed to. Depression, alcoholism, and suicide plague communities across the country, and I'm certain Mom isn't the only victim that many of you have mourned. I want to speak about these challenges because being ashamed of mental illness and its associated symptoms only makes it more difficult to help someone who is at risk. And there are no secrets in small towns, so speaking honestly shouldn't shock anyone. Mom had within her a deep, almost unfathomable pit of sadness. I believe that the responsibility of loving and taking care of us boys and our father acted like a barrier that kept Mom from falling in. The pit was always there, though, and she probably always felt herself aware of it. Looking back, if we had looked closely, we could have seen her peering over the edge at times. When Dad died, the strongest support beam in that barrier was gone, and she fell in. Some say that suicide is a selfish act, and I do understand why they say that. But I also know Mom was not selfish, and and I believe she might still be alive if she had focused on her own happiness as much as she did ours. She sacrificed all of her individual preferences, dreams, and desires to support Dad and us. Her selflessness when it came to her family was unmatched. Knowing this fact, I can almost comprehend the sadness and pain she suffered. I wish I had had the courage to have discussed suicide with her directly. We sought help, and she tried to help herself. To be frank, our society has failed miserably in building systems that can effectively assist families find adequate medical treatment for mental illness. 40,000 Americans commit suicide annually. And I urge you that if you know someone who is at risk, to talk to them. Maintaining silence on the subject isn't being respectful of the dead. It risks adding to their numbers. I want to conclude by focusing on the positive. We're not perfect, but Mom raised 4 pretty good kids. She was the calming balance to Dad's hyperactive influence. We loved and valued our mother in a way that I hope she knew. I know that if she had internalized the appreciation and respect we had for her, she might have overcome her struggle. Once again, thank you all for coming, and goodbye to Mom, and please take care of yourselves.